What are you going to do? Well, obviously you have the choice to just leave. But let me give you two things that almost never fail for me when that flag gets waved in front of my eyes and God says, you know, this isn't right where you ought to go. One, if they're talking about Joe, start picking some things about Joe. You might not even like Joe, that you appreciate. It could be someone you know, it could be someone's friend, it could be a politician that you don't like very much. Okay? Pick out something you like and start talking about that person in a positive light. It's like cold water on a fire. In fact, listen to this proverb. It's found in chapter 26, verse 20. Without wood, a fire goes out. Without gossip, a quarrel dies down. And so all you're doing is pouring cold water on the gossiping going on. You know what I've found? Gossip is not partial to any age. Every age group seems to have a knack for doing it. So that's number one. Think positive, speak positive about the person. And number two, the second thing that you can do, and almost without fail, is if let's just say, for instance, there's three people that are part of this conversation. You got Joe, you got Mary, and you got Molly. And Molly and Mary are talking about Joe. And you start to realize this is going south, and this might be gossip. You say, well, let's bring Joe. Let me go get Joe. What does the Bible say? If you have an issue with somebody, what's supposed to happen? You're not supposed to talk to Molly about it. You go to Joe. So all it's doing is taking a biblical principle that if I have issue with somebody, I need to go talk to them. If it's not something you're going to say to their face, then don't say it behind their back, right? This isn't rocket science. Okay? So when the flag goes off, you say, well, let's go get Joe. Let's talk to Joe first. So those two things almost will never fail in dousing the thing called gossip. Several years ago, there was a person in our church who had tremendous gifts, but that person could not control their tongue. 3 separate times I had to meet with them about stories and gossip that had gone around and tracking it down, which is what I always try to do. I always try to track it to the source and hold that person accountable. You know, this is a church. Gossip is what we do. Right? It's what we're good at. So anyway, it just would not stop, and we had to say, then you can't be in charge of this ministry. Gossip is a sin. It should be treated like all other sins. And if a brother stumbles, go to them in person and try to deal with it. Now, just for the record, we all stumble in many ways. And none of us are perfect in this. So it's not like I'm perfect and they're not. Okay, but we're on a team, we're trying to work together, we're trying to make a body, a church, look, feel, and genuinely be different than the rest. That is to be like Jesus. The next one is holding our tongue, simply putting a guard there and not saying everything that pops into our minds. Look at chapter 13, verse 3. He who guards his lips guards what? Guards his life. But he who speaks rashly or without thinking or quickly will come to ruin. Again, James says, be quick to listen, slow to speak. Quick to listen, slow to speak. Right? So we have it the opposite way. Quick to speak, slow to listen. And Proverbs just has many, many proverbs on this subject of putting a guard over my mouth. You know, your computer has one. You know, it has a firewall. It has McAfee or Norton or some kind of program that you paid money for. And if you're connected to a lot of computers, this is a lot of money that your IT guy has put into guarding what goes in and what comes out of a computer. What if you had a filter embedded in your program, in your hard drive, that guarded what was said and saved you from either spreading or receiving viruses? That's what Proverbs is really talking about. The other thing that Proverbs talks a lot about is how anger and our mouth go hand in hand. You know, when we're angry, have you ever sent an email that you received and you were angry at the time and you wish you could have pulled it back? You said some things in the heat of the moment that was what was I thinking? You know, so if you need to count to 10, then do it. There's a light on your car that's probably never been on. It's the water temperature, the engine temperature light. Okay, this isn't the check engine light that always goes on, right? This is the water temperature or the engine temperature. If that light goes on, do not disregard it, right? Now, I said in the first two services something that was an error. A mechanic just told me. I said, if that light goes on, shut the engine off. He said, no, you're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to put it in idle and let it continue to cool if it can so that it doesn't freeze up, blow. Either way, do not disregard the engine temperature light if it comes on. Don't say, I'll fix this when I get home. I'll call a mechanic in a couple of miles. Right then, you need to take action. And that's what I'm talking about. That's what the Proverbs is talking about when it comes to speaking when you're angry. Okay, there's a point at which you say, okay, back off. Stop. Take this seriously. I mean, don't raise your hands. But how many times have you said something in anger that was not very helpful? Now, if you're married, yeah, all the time. There's a point at which that light should come on, and hopefully we're tuned in enough to God and to the Spirit where He says, stop. Whatever you say from this point on, you will only get yourself in trouble. It will only hurt the situation. Let's back off. Let's cool the engine down and come back at it. It's not putting it under the rug. It's not denying that it's real. You come back to it later. This single principle has helped me greatly for 29 years. Married to my wife. We realized early on that both of us, especially me, had a knack for stubborn. And, this takes some wisdom. So anyway, enough said. Proverbs says, in essence, number 5, talk less, sin less. This is especially for preachers. Good News puts chapter 10, verse 19 this way: the more you talk, the more likely you are to sin. And the next one is healing. Now, this was a surprise to me. And as I studied the whole of Proverbs and the wisdom that's there, trying to first get it into me and then talk about it, this subject surprised me. If you take all the subjects that Solomon talks about in Proverbs, this one equals them all. That is, look at the scripture here. What you say can preserve life or destroy it. Again, the great power of the tongue. The lips of the righteous nourish many. Reckless words pierce like a sword, but the tongue of the wise brings what? Healing. Are people healed because they're around you? Because of what you say? After this last service, there's 2 brand new Christians. In fact, one of them was baptized in the previous service. And after the service, I caught him in the hallway and I said, because I've never seen 2 people that so are close to 2 of the disciples. I said, I want to give you both a homework and I want you to do it together. I said, you're Peter and you're John. Now, what do you know about Peter? He talked before he thought, right? He's always putting his foot in his mouth. That's this guy. Okay? And the other guy is like John. He thinks through stuff. He's more calculated. And they're great friends. I said, here's your assignment. I want you to read through all 4 Gospels, and you are supposed to write down everything you learn about Peter, and you're to write down everything you learn about John.